Good morning, everyone, depending on where you are.
Good morning.
Let's begin with some introductions from the judges. I'll start since I'm one of your senior judges today. My name is Barney Rosenberg. I've been judging in this competition for, this is the 23rd year. After college, I joined an organization that was in some vogue at the time called the Peace Corps, and served for 2 years as a Peace Corps volunteer in Brazil, where I started a housing co-op for folks who had never even owned the land they lived on before. And when I left, we had 1,000 houses under construction. I became fluent in Portuguese before law school, and during and after I worked as an interpreter for the State Department, translating for guests of the US government. I've traveled a little bit, as you can tell from that map behind me, but I've only been to 65 countries. I have a long way to go. Really looking forward to your presentations. Luis?
Hi, my name is Luis Milan, and this is my probably 4 or 5 time here in this competition. I'm very happy. I'm very glad to share with you and hear all your presentations. I have been in the finance and banking industry for almost 25 years. And I work in many different countries, in Mexico, Puerto Rico, and here in North America also. So I have a lot of global experience in risk management, ethics, and compliance. So I'm very happy to be with you.
Hello, I'm delighted to be here with you. This is my 2nd year as a judge, and it's a very gratifying experience to hear from the consulting firms, and I find so much relevance to what I do in my work. I'm a creative analytic with a CPA. My first career was in financial services with a AAA international bank. My second career was in consulting with a Big 4 firm, where I also led their civic, charitable, and corporate social responsibility work. My third career has been in marketing, communications, and talent development, working with various business organizations. Currently, law firms are my specialty. So thanks for all the work you did in getting ready.
Morning, everybody. My name is Chris Selsey, and I am in the garbage and recycling business for a local city north of, or I guess not north, in Southern California. I am from Northern California. I am the rookie of the group. This is my first year, but I'm enjoying it so far. So just keep it going.
Glenn Schaller here. Had a bit of a diversified career. Started out in entertainment, went into international business, worked with Amazon for a while, doing stuff domestically as well as internationally, going to China for a few trips, moved into the energy sector, and have spent time both in the US, Canada, the UK, Africa, as well as opening a couple shops down in Argentina for their shale plays down there. And I'm back residing stateside and continuing on with consulting for both in the energy sector as well as outside.
I have some instructions I have to read for you. I will be keeping time, so that's part of my duties. So in this part of the competition, you are taking a fictional role. So make sure we understand who you are and what your role is in relation to the business and the ethics issues you're talking about. You have 25 minutes to describe the legal, financial, and most importantly, the ethical dimensions of the problem, and to recommend solutions that pass muster on all 3 counts. During this time, you won't be interrupted. We'll save the questions for afterwards. And when you are done with your 25-minute presentation, we'll have 10 or more minutes for Q&A with the judges, after which we'll stop. Everybody will take a deep breath and we'll give you some feedback. So with that, tell me when you're ready to start and I'll start the timer.
All right, we're all ready. All right. Good morning, Shake Shack Board of Directors. My name is Amore Pescariu, and we are CALA Consulting. We're here to discuss with you today how to further improve your sustainability efforts throughout your entire supply chain. We've read your Stand for Something Good reports and have analyzed your company's standing and can see that you deeply care about your surrounding communities and are committed to taking actions that improve our shared environment. With that said, we know that there is still much more work to be done towards our sustainability goals, and we are excited to present to you our findings on how your business can continue to meet the hunger for sustainability now and sustainability in the future. As mentioned, my name is Amori Piscaria, and I am the Chief Ethics Analyst for CALA Consulting.
My name is Andres Angelini Souza, and I am the Legal Analyst for CALA Consulting.
My name is Leona Sine, and I am the environmental analyst.
And my name is Carlos Marrero, and I am the financial analyst.
Perfect. All right. And today we'll be go ahead and starting with our problem introduction and some background information, and then we'll proceed with our proposal to solve said problem. We will then discuss our implementation through marketing strategy and our global plan. And then we will add our legal, ethical, and financial justifications for it. Finally, we'll be closing off with a simple conclusion of our plan and then proceed to questions. All right, fantastic. So starting off, I'm sure that you're currently exposed in media such as this, showing the desperate state that our world is in. And you know who else is exposed to this information? Your consumers. We are experiencing times where international governments are coming together like never before to address the existential issue of climate change. Now, I'm also sure that you are all familiar with our humble beginnings as a hot dog stand in New York and how we've grown to become one of the leaders in the fast casual market with a $3 billion market cap. I'm also sure that you're familiar with our responsible growth by which we stand for something good and pay our employees a fair wage and donate up to 5% of our revenues to local charities, as well as push for greater sustainability. And as you can see from the provided slide, Shake Shack currently has fantastic sustainability programs, such as recycling waste and recycling oil, where I believe over 1 million kilograms of waste oil has been recycled. And in addition to this, we also donate 1% of our water bottle revenues to groups building clean water projects all around the world. And finally, using renewables in several of our restaurants nationwide. However, despite these sustainability measures, there's still a great amount of work to be done. Our main product offerings, hamburgers, milkshakes, etc., are detrimental to the environment, and they contribute massive amounts of methane and carbon dioxide emissions. To really put this into perspective, did you know that producing 1 pound of beef, just 1 pound, can actually create more emissions than burning a gallon of gasoline? I know that's shocking, and as well as you may know, the world cares and the consumers care about how their actions affect the planet. Here's some data to support this statement. As you can see, many consumers care about this, 32% in the USA, 82% worldwide, and then 42% of millennials globally are willing to pay premiums for sustainable products. And then to demonstrate this trend, only 26% of baby boomers and 31% of Gen X are willing to pay more for sustainable products, while 42%, which is Shake Shack's main market segment, are willing to pay a 25% premium. So why would we not expand on this opportunity? It's just good business sense, and it is our moral imperative to pursue this. To show how we plan on tackling this head on, I'm going to pass this over to my colleague, Leona, who will discuss our solutions.
Thank you, Amori. So the point that we really want to drive home is that sustainability is not what you do, it's who you are. And I also want to mention that in order to fully make this transition, after further research, we did make slight modifications to the original 3 points made on our executive summary. Shake Shack is on the course of having first mover advantages across its business operations. And to continue that path, we wanted to present with you our newest findings that we are confident will accelerate Shake Shack on this path. Therefore, I can hope you can understand these modifications. So back to our solution, we are taking the approach to analyze Shake Shack's operations, not only from its menu, but from multiple angles throughout the entire supply chain to continue their efforts toward the sustainable identity. To start, we will look at how Shake Shack can improve their cattle farming, then go into their in-house operations, and finally, their menu options. So cattle farming, starting with the source of the vast majority of Shake Shack's products. As Amori mentioned, beef and dairy consumption makes up nearly 10% of global emissions. This gives Shake Shack immense opportunity to decrease their carbon footprint. So our solution, as you can see here, is adding red seaweed to their diet. This is proven to drastically improve digestive health and reduce belching, which could in turn reduce methane emissions by up to 80%. In case you're unaware of this statistic, methane is at least 25 times as potent as carbon dioxide when it comes to trapping heat inside our atmosphere. So not only would this shift be better for the environment, but it is also more cost effective than the current diet that they have, and it increases body weight. And it still has the same great taste for customers. This shift will especially be doable because for Shake Shack, they only work with 3 main farms that already have excellent ratings for humane practices. Therefore, there won't be any need for major shifts to their supply chain, but they will still have the opportunity to see drastic changes in their livestock emissions. So now transitioning, I want to show you the potential energy savings for in-store operations. Look at some of these amazing certifications that Shake Shack can receive. Just think of the impact that this would have on customers like myself, seeing all of these plaques on your walls or windows as they enter your store. This assurance of Shake Shack's efforts would give consumers the feeling of health and sustainability, these being 2 very important factors for their #1 market segment, which is millennials. So how could they get here and how does this affect their finances? The great news is a vast majority of Shake Shack's locations are in areas with the most government incentives to reduce carbon emissions. There are national laws working with programs that allow companies to invest in energy savings while making their investments cash flow positive in the long run through tax incentives, rebates, utility bills, savings, and more. Energy improvements in Shake Shack's buildings could be made in areas such as lighting, heating, temperature controls, water usage, and overall utility costs. These energy upgrades will all lead to net zero buildings and even improve the overall health of the buildings for employers and consumers. So lastly, we're going to be looking at the menu to really tie their supply chain together. A product we strongly encourage Shake Shack to introduce is dairy-free milkshakes. As you can see in this Twitter post, and a popular question to Shake Shack is why are there no dairy-free ice cream products? This meets the markets for individuals who are lactose intolerant, vegetarian, vegan, or who are simply trying to reduce their carbon footprint. There's a population of 50 million lactose intolerant people within the USA alone and 1.6 million vegans. Dairy-free milk options are a perfect complement to the vegetarian and vegan options that Shake Shack already has available. Sustainability-wise, alternatives such as soy and coconut milk produce about 1/3 of emissions compared to dairy milk. This will slightly increase their cost of goods, but Carlos will later get into how we offset those costs. So now, onto the final solution that I'm very excited to introduce to you within our menu. Before I get into that, I want you to think of how fast trends are changing. Think about how crazy it would have sounded in 1990s to heavily invest into a burger that looks like a burger, but it's entirely vegetarian. As we see now, it's uncommon for these options not to be available in the restaurant industry. So I'm now going to show you how Shake Shack can stay ahead of the game in these rapidly changing sustainability trends. Along with our previous improvement in cow diets, Shake Shack is already having 80% more sustainable meat products for the future. Additionally, in the millennial market, 62% of millennials are willing to try new flavors, and 44% say they would like restaurants to offer more ethnic foods. So let me introduce you to a product that is an ancient practice, but it's also the future. This would be the Cricket Burger. It would not be implemented in all of our locations right away. Just as Shake Shack implemented experimental vegetarian options around certain locations, our plan includes introducing the Cricket Burger option in metropolitan areas such as New York City, Chicago, and Austin, where restaurants are already introducing these products into their market and where there's a very high sustainability consumer mindset. We're also going to introduce it into our international locations around China, where insect diets are largely accepted. In fact, in 2021, 80% of the global population ate insects by choice. With the growing world population, growing demand for food, and limited land supply, insect diets are already becoming popular in Western areas that are less prone to these kinds of foods. Compared to cows, crickets produce 80% less methane, are 80% edible, are faster to produce, have amazing health benefits, such as significantly more micronutrients, while offering roughly the same amount of protein as beef. This market is expected to grow 8 times larger than it is today, which Carlos will expand upon later. But for now, I'm going to hand it over to Andressa to discuss how we're going to drive sales and our legal reasonings behind our decisions.
Thank you, Liana. As Liana mentioned, how are we going to ensure that we are driving up sales with these implementations? So marketing is our main approach. And marketing, since Shake Shack it has initiated, they have focused not on necessarily more antique approaches like TV commercials and radio advertisements, which do require a big budget. However, they have focused on word of mouth and social media. Right now, Shake Shack has a great social media presence, especially through their Instagram and TikTok, which are social media platforms that millennials are very much interested in and engaged in. And so, as you see, this is a screenshot from the current Instagram page. They have a lot of interesting pictures from different angles, tackling their products, which is food, making sure that when the consumer enters the Instagram page, they see all the options that are available, get themselves hungry, and makes them want to leave immediately Instagram and go into the nearest location to get their Shake Shack. So expanding to TikTok, which as we have heard is a booming social media platform, especially for millennials and Gen Z, which is the second generation that's heavily consuming Shake Shack. The videos on TikTok are a little different from different platforms. So millennials right now are really interested in short content, which gets them the information directly and short paced, and so that in a very creative way. That's the main alternative that TikTok tries to put their content out. And so they already have a TikTok presence. And something that we are challenging even more is to increase that by using different trends, different sounds, hashtags, everything, and tackling different marketing approaches to really get our consumers more interested in going to Shake Shack and not only consuming products they have already consumed and enjoyed, but also into the new products we're advertising. In order to further increase sales, there are two issues that we're trying to tackle. So for Cricket Burger, which is something that we understand is very innovative and creative, remembering that this is for mainly a sustainability approach, and the Cricket Burger is the face of our sustainability identity. And so in order to really incentivize people to have an open mindset to try this burger and not necessarily be repulsed by it at first, we are implementing the credit system. We understand that, especially for millennials and Gen Z, financial instability is something that is greatly common around not only the US, but around the world. So a financial incentive that we are trying to approach is that the next time they go into a Shake Shack in a location that already has the Cricket Burger, they will receive a voucher for 50% discount. So that next time that they go into a Shake Shack location, they're incentivized to buy a Cricket Burger, which will be half off of the price of an actual burger. This way they can try it out, they have that incentive, and hopefully come back and share their experience as well with their friends. The other approach would be partnerships. So partnering with small groups that have this influence already in environmental and sustainability groups, people that think alike this way. And we're going to do that by especially attacking the micro-influencers. Micro-influencers are any people on social media with 10,000 to 100,000 followers. That gives us a niche market directly to tackle. There are micro-influencers that heavily focus on their page for being more environmentally conscious and following a more sustainable lifestyle. And so if we tackle these micro-influencers who already have this niche audience, we're directly tackling the audience that, as Shake Shack wants to even further expand into the sustainability lifestyle, this is the exact audience we want to tackle. The prices for micro-influencers is heavily accessible. It's not as if we are dealing with big celebrities. So from $200 to $1,000, we can get micro-influencers to contribute to advertise Shake Shack and put out their own content in order to reach their audience, which is the audience that we want to tackle. And so is it really worth it to pay this amount of dollars in order to get what might seem like a small population? Well, actually, there's a statistics that proves that an average of $6.5 in revenue comes for each dollar invested in influencer marketing. And as mentioned, we're not just tackling the big influencers, the big celebrities, but while focusing on these more niche audiences, we're actually tackling exactly the people that we want to focus on. So going back to TikTok, this is a screenshot of the current page with 90,000 followers. So on TikTok, followers isn't the main driver up for content visualization. It's actually how you engage with your followers and trends and the different hashtags and sounds that you use. The next image you can see, if you research taste tests, there are already many content that shows different people trying different things and different menu options. So that is something that is already trending. So if Shake Shack follows that approach, especially with the Cricket Burger, and follows this creative approach of trying the Cricket Burger challenge and having these influencers who already have a platform and already have an audience to tackle and further incentivize people to go into our stores and try it out. It's a great and organic way to really incentivize people who already have both the mindset of going into and trying a Cricket Burger, but also those who are still a little reluctant and need that extra push, and seeing someone who they already recognize the face of an influencer they follow in order to be incentivized to go into our stores and purchase that item. Going into the legalities, tackling our 3 solutions. So for farming methane emissions, the operations and energy efficiency carbon emissions, as well as menu regulations on edible insects. Starting with emission regulations, though there are no formal carbon emission taxes in the US right now, there are many implemented worldwide. And since it has been growing in the past, we do need to look outside of the US in order to understand current trends that are going on globally. Finland actually was the first country in Europe to start the carbon emission tax regulation in the early 1990s. And after that, we have seen an expansion through other European countries that have abided to their own set of regulations when it comes to carbon regulations. And closer to home, even New York City being one of the cities that has one of the largest number of Shake Shack locations. There's actually a prominent law that has recently passed to be implemented by 2025, where there will be a fine of $268 per metric ton of exceeded carbon footprint, to be extended by 2030, with the goal of having economy-wide greenhouse gas emissions to be lowered by 40%, and by 2050 to be lowered by 80%. So even though there are no nationwide carbon emissions at the moment in the United States, it would be ignorant of Shake Shack's part to not understand and look outside to see the global trends and even how it's already tackling home, and taking advantage of current governmental incentives in order to help financially us get to these goals, so that once they do become a regulation and official laws, Shake Shack is already in front of the page. And this is especially important if we look at the ESG rating that Shake Shack currently has as 31.7, we see that it is in a high risk. So this is the moment for Shake Shack to really tackle the issue right before it becomes something detrimental and puts the company at risk. Lastly, when it comes to the legislation for edible insects. So one of the main target markets outside of the US that we are targeting is China. China already eats many insects, and they have been doing so for many years. It's part of their culture. In regards to regulations, they don't have necessarily specific nationwide rules. However, they do have per certain locations. Overall, it's an easy market to enter to. They don't make it very bureaucratic in order to have these regulations for insects. In the US, however, there are specifications that the crickets must be bred for human consumption, as well as follow FDA regulations, meaning passing all tests for safety and health, and also include the correct labels, as there are different types of crickets in the market and they just need to be specified which ones they are. So now, in regards to our ethical responsibility, I'll be passing it to Amori.
Thank you, Andressa. So in addressing our ethical responsibility, we need to consider who we're responsible to. First of all, we have to be responsible to ourselves as a company. We have to stay true to what our vision is of standing for something good. We need to be able to do that, and we can do that through our sustainable actions. In addition to this, of course, being a company, we have to turn a profit, and that goes into being responsible to our investors. Our investors are going to demand that we post profits, and by doing this, as Carlos will soon explain, we can actually increase our profits while also continuing to be sustainable. Third, we also need to be responsible to our customers. Of course, we know we need to treat our loyal customers right. So we're not going to eliminate our good products that we already have, such as our normal burgers, milkshakes, etc. In fact, we're just going to supplement this and provide our customers with more choice so that we still retain them and hold them as loyal customers. Finally, we also need to be responsible to ourselves as a society. Of course, Shake Shack being a large company, we do have a big footprint when it comes to the environment, sustainability, et cetera. And of course, by pursuing these programs, we can be a better member of our society. And in tying these to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, I would like to examine each part of our solutions as how it relates to that. So first off, our cattle farming measures, where we're going to be feeding the cattle seaweed diets, excuse me. That would relate to SDGs 12 and 13, specifically targets 12.2, which is the sustainable management and use of natural resources, 12.6, which is sustainable practices in companies, and 13.2, which is integrating climate change measures into policy and planning, more so at the company level rather than the government level. And then our in-store operations, that would fulfill target 13.2 again, which is, again, integrating climate change measures in our company. And then, okay. Well, the third one was, yeah, there we go. Our menu options. So that would be fulfilling goals 13 and 15, specifically targets 13.2, once again, and 15.5, which is protecting biodiversity and natural habitat. So by eliminating, or at least reducing our presence in, beef and dairy consumption, we will be using less of that. So of course, that'll translate to using less land, which that's a good thing. And we'll be emitting less and making sure that our forests or our land habitats are protected. And now to put our numbers into action, I'm going to pass this over to Carlos, who's going to explain our financials.
So thank you for that introduction, Amori. This all sounds very, very beautiful, but at the end of the day, does this make financial sense? And that's what we're going to get into in these next slides. So Shake Shack has had a meteoric rise in the last 7 years. It's raised its revenue from $191 million in 2015 to $740 million in 2021. There was a growth of over 40% in the revenue from the 2020 to the 2021 fiscal year, demonstrating just how fast Shake Shack is establishing itself as a big competitor in the fast casual food market. It has an astonishing compounded annual growth rate, or CAGR, of 22.6% from the years between 2022 and 2027, and its expected revenue for 2027 is of $2.5 billion. So now, again, reiterating that point of consumer spending, there is a trend among millennials that, again, they show that they are willing to pay a significant amount for eco-friendly foods. That's a point I really want to emphasize to just show you how important it is for us to stay ahead of the curve and to innovate. So the average cost of a corn and hay-fed cow per day ranges from about 59 cents to $1.83. Incorporating a low-forage red seaweed diet for a cow right now costs about $1.60 per day. And it's not a drastic difference, but for some farmers, they've been cautious to incorporate that as it's a more expensive diet during the spring. And as Liana mentioned, a red seaweed diet increases the weight of a cow by 20%, which in turn results in higher beef production, leading to lower beef costs in the long run, while greatly tackling the greenhouse emissions stemming from cattle farming. Now, moving on to the non-dairy alternatives, there's already a substantial and established market. With a 2021 market size of $22 billion, its CAGR for 2022 to 2028 is a steady but still high 11.7%, demonstrating how this is not a temporary fad, but a consumer preference that is here to stay. Its market size for 2028 is around $48 billion. So now the cost for implementing the non-dairy products are compared here. The average cost of a half gallon of whole milk is $2.15, while soy milk is 1.29 times that, and coconut milk is costing 1.39 times the average half gallon of whole milk. The set price of a Shake Shack milkshake is $5.69, and the recommended prices for a soy and coconut milkshakes are around $6.50 to $6.69 and $6.99 to $7.99, respectively. While these are price increases, they're still below the market price of similar shakes using the same ingredients. These extra costs are offset by the increased demand of such a large market of lactose intolerant customers, potentially around 15% of Americans who weren't able to enjoy these products before. So now the insect meat market, while it's still pretty small, it's also showing very fast growth worldwide. Its current market size is of only 1.4 billion, but it's expected to rise to 8 billion by 2030 with an incredible CAGR of 24%. Now, the cost of a pound of insect meat is just about 50% more expensive than ground beef. And while a Shake Shack burger costs around $6.39, the already popular vegetarian option of the Shroom burger costs $8.19. So we suggest a price slightly below $10 for the Cricket Burger to maintain a competitive price edge in the market. And finally, the marketing costs for the influencer program we suggested. Shake Shack's operating costs in 2020 were $566 million. With that, their other operating costs, which include things like the marketing costs, maintenance and repairs, utilities, property insurance, and credit card fees, was of $73 million.
Carlos,
So then-
Carlos, I'm going to have to stop you there because we've run out of time. And I know some of my fellow board members have jets to catch. So if we could, what I'd like to do is sort of move on to the Q&A section.
Sure,
And
absolutely.
if I could start, I really worry about our supply chain. I mean, these dairy farmers and hay growers have been with us for a long time and they do really good work. How many jobs are going to be lost in our current supply chain if we switch to seafood and crickets?
So actually, this would not be replacing any of the current items. It would be adding. So we are not taking away any jobs from any of the farms. The point is that the population is growing and the demand is growing. So we need to introduce more alternatives for people to purchase who are willing to also try things outside of our current diet. So if anything, it'd be adding more jobs.
Excuse me, can I add on to that supply chain question?
Sure.
With regards to the Cricket Burger in the launch, I recall when McDonald's launched some shrimp salads and really decimated the shrimp market and just ran out of capacity and had all sorts of public relations issues. What is the supply chain like for the crickets? I mean, can it supply our 500 stores? And are there any reputational risks here that are associated with our supply chain?
So actually crickets, there are many farms worldwide, in Asia especially, but even in the US, there is a huge farm in Austin right now, and they can be generated up to 55 degrees in latitude. So that is a big area where they are produced, and also the supply chain for that is really easy, as there can be a lot stored in a small container. There's even what's called a nomad farm, as they can be transited. It's not like cattle farm where you need to have a specific location, rather than they can be easily transited. So the supply chain for that would be actually simpler than resolving the logistics of cattle farming.
Chris?
Just
I
another
have
question. Oh. Chris,
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I had a couple questions, and I thought that was a great statistic with your 1 pound of beef versus 1 gallon of gas. I thought that was great. My question is, though, do crickets have any environmental benefit? I mean, and goes to the second question: is what sort of pushback will you hear from the interested animal groups? And I'm using PETA, and I don't think crickets are considered a pet or an animal, but I'm sure there'll be some group, some interested group that will say, oh, the torture on the crickets, living in the conditions. Have you thought about that sort of response to those type of questions?
Yes. So currently, crickets reduce emissions by 80%, and they save up to 97% of water. So we looked it up, and we did not see any rights pushing toward insects. So right now, that is not currently a problem, and there are already dozens of insect restaurants throughout the United States. As a bigger market, what we are going to push is that millennials want more ethnic foods, and crickets are an ancient consumption. They're better for the environment. So if people switch to this, they can get more protein. And I've actually spoken to people who are vegetarian and vegan, and they said they would be open to trying this in my age group, which is Shake Shack's market niche. So there might be a small group of people to push back on insect treatment, but I highly doubt it's going to really push back on Shake Shack as a whole.
Okay.
Luis?
Yes, I have a couple questions. One of them is, what about the flavor? And because I understand this is like a test. So how do you know that the people will like that product? It's one of my first questions. And okay, let you answer that.
Yeah, I could take that. So first off, with regards to the taste, for example, I can definitely speak to the new diet of the seaweed-fed cows. From studies, they're shown that there's little to no taste difference in the meat, so there shouldn't be a worry there. And just to clarify as well, with the cricket burgers and the dairy-free milkshakes, we are adding these as supplements, so we're not taking away our beef or dairy milkshakes. So those options are still there for loyal consumers, but we're adding the crickets and the dairy-free milkshakes just to see how it works. And there have been several trials throughout the US. I believe in New York specifically, there were quite a lot of different restaurants offering some variety of cricket meat or etc. And they were actually quite successful. And there were a lot of people who were actually quite willing to try it.
What is there to eat on a cricket? It's all shell and crunch and legs
Right.
and antennas.
Yeah, so it's grounded into a fine powder. So the exoskeleton is actually what provides so much of the nutrients. I mean, in Mexico, it's actually a specialty plate, and it's like a cricket crunch taco. It's very common. But within these burgers, as the picture showed in the presentation, it doesn't look much different, and the texture won't be much different because it is into a powder. Does that answer your question?
Without ever having eaten one, I guess so.
The whole point is that millennials
Yes.
are very excited to
Kind of.
try these new things.
Kind of.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Millennials are looking for the new trend, and they're looking to try
I
these new
understand
things,
that
and they're
they
excited.
try
Yeah.
and they like to try new things. However, my question is about sustainable. How sustainable is that? Because probably they would like to try maybe 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, but it is sustainable. That's my question.
And I can actually add on to what Leona was talking about. While I don't know the exact number, I do know for a fact that cricket cultivation, it uses far less land than typical cow cultivation, as you don't need huge pastures for cows to graze on. Crickets are very content with very little. And not only that, but crickets have much shorter lifespans than a cow. So, they're in and out way faster than a cow that usually lives for years. So yeah, and I believe Leona can actually add some more onto that.
Yeah, and to answer directly to your question, this is why we're introducing a pilot it's more of a pilot trial. So Shake Shack has carried this out in their shroom burgers. They tried other burgers that weren't as popular. Also with their French fries, they had problems with that for many years. So that's why we're experimenting in China first, where it's very common. And then in very specific stores around the US, such as New York City, Austin, and any extra, we're only going to be doing it in very low inventory to start with, because it's just a test. But if this takes off, we are going to be the leaders in this market.
Yeah, we have not yet talked about the non-dairy drinks, and those sound more mainstream to me than the insects. But how about supply chain when it comes to dairy alternatives?
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and tackle that. So again, it's showing that it's a huge market. So there is very stable supply chains that we can address and get our new supply of non-dairy milk from. Again, we've seen trends in what the preferred non-dairy milk is. The preferred one is almond milk. However, almond milk also has a negative impact on greenhouse emissions and on the environment. So we settle with the next two most popular ones, which were soy milk and coconut milk, which also have pretty high rankings among millennials and consumers.
Additionally, these ingredients are already implemented so much throughout the United States, such as introducing alternatives at like Starbucks coffee. They're starting to do oat milk, coconut milk. They have all of these options. So it would not be hard for Shake Shack to find a supplier for that.
So one of the things that the industry saw during the recession is people simplifying their menus and reducing SKUs and products. And you're taking a position of increasing the product offerings. How do you gauge that strategy versus what's going on across our competitors?
So I'll go ahead and take that one on as well. So as we saw in the models for the market growth of Shake Shack, it's risen exponentially in the last few years. And even after the slump of 2020, it rose about 40% in revenues towards 2021, and it's continuing that trend in 2022. So this is a perfect moment where our competitors are more down and out. They're more trying to simplify. They're more trying to just regain traction, like McDonald's that we spoke about only had -8 in their CAGR from the last 6 or 7 years. So now is a perfect opportunity for Shake Shack to start expanding and get a strong foothold and be the first one in the door for these markets.
Where does one get red seaweed?
I can take that one on as well. So there's actually an American company called Symbiosa, which specializes solely on red seaweed, and they are starting to actually push more towards the mainstream, towards incorporating that as a part of the diet for the cattle. It's not a 100% diet of red seaweed, but it is incorporating it with grass, corn, and hay.
Judges, any more questions? If not, we'll stop the timer. Thank you. Well done. There is, as one of my fellow judges referred to this earlier, there's an ick factor when it comes to eating insects, but heck, we're omnivores. So a little bit of feedback for the team, less in the way of feedback than a little bit of guidance. Please amend your resumes to include this participation. And you should say that you were selected by your university to compete in the International Business Ethics and Sustainability Case Competition, a global competition. As somebody who has reviewed many, many, many resumes, it will be noticed, people will be impressed, and during the interview, they will ask you questions about it. So it's called shameless self-promotion. Luis, any feedback?
Yes, I like the presentation, great presentation. I think it's a great idea. I still have some issues or some concerns about the supply, but anyways, I think it's a great idea, great presentation, very clear, and obviously very fluent. So I really like it. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Chris?
I too agree that I thought it was very well presented. I really appreciate the statistics and some of the examples you gave. That makes it a lot easier to kind of put it in our in our realm of what it really means. And so, again, I appreciate the fact that the 1 pound of beef, to produce 1 pound of beef is creates more methane than a gallon of gas, and it kind of just brings it relates it easier for me, in fact. And the red seaweed, where you increases the weight of the cattle 20%. I thought that was great too. I mean, it just you basically presented an option and you gave results of what you could see with that option, which I thought to me that was key. Good job.
Thank you.
Cynthia, feedback?
Very well done. A couple of notes, because I'm counting on you to tighten this up and go all the distance here. One is, in the beginning, you several times said we, like you were part of the company, and remember you're consultants, so you want to recommend and suggest and prod the board to consider a pilot or a demonstration or whatever. Secondly, the admissions regulations section was a little confusing to me compared to all of the other sequences. And again, maybe that gets trimmed up in the end. It went a little bit different direction than some of the consumer facing comments you had elsewhere. And then the last point, which is to think broadly. You have some really tremendous statistics about millennial behavior and millennials being the market. But when I go to Shake Shack, I see a lot of families, and they're not just millennials. So use those statistics to support some of it, but don't make it exclusive to that, because you have some really tremendous ideas that a sophisticated company could launch.
Any other feedback from the judges? No? If not, thanks, everyone. Good job.
Thank you very
See
much for
tomorrow.
your time and criticism.
Thank you,
Appreciate
everybody.
it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Hope you pursue consulting careers.
Thank you.